Welcome to today's deep dive. We're going to explore the Enneagram Type 3, the achiever.
Right.
We're using two articles from the Spiritual Seek as kind of our guideposts here.
Okay.
So for our listeners, just imagine someone, really ambitious, super successful, charming even, but maybe a little too focused on appearances.
Yeah.
That's our Type 3 in a
I
nutshell.
like that.
And here's a curveball. Type 3s, they're actually considered part of the, what is it called? The heart-based triad on the Enneagram.
Yeah, the heart-based triad.
So
Yeah.
they might not be, super emotional on the surface,
Right.
but those motivations, they run deep.
That's a good point. It really is key to understanding the type 3, that emotional core. For them, it all stems from this fear of being worthless.
Worthless, wow.
And then the flip side, right, this huge desire to feel valuable.
So that's where all that achievement comes from.
Exactly. It all translates into that achievement-oriented nature. They're always
Yeah.
trying to prove their worth through what they accomplish.
So it's not just like ambition for the sake of it.
Right.
They're trying to validate themselves through all that success.
Exactly. And both articles really hit on this idea that type 3s, they often equate their self-worth with whatever validation they get from the outside world. Job titles, possessions, social status, it's all a yardstick for how they see themselves.
Makes sense, given that they're in the feeling center of the Enneagram.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing, and it's a little bit of a paradox. They're driven by feelings, but they can seem emotionally detached.
Absolutely. That's because they tend to compartmentalize their emotions,
Oh, interesting.
push them aside so they can focus on those goals. It's a strategy almost. They don't want to be slowed down by those feelings.
So one article, it had this story about a Type 3. Super successful, right?
Okay.
But they had this realization like, wait, I'm living someone else's life.
Oh, wow.
Because they were so focused on what everyone expected of them, they totally lost sight of their own desires.
That's a really common struggle for type 3s. They're adaptable, they're driven. Right.
And it can lead them to excel in pretty much anything. But they risk losing themselves in the process.
So it's this complex mix of fear, ambition, and that need for validation.
Absolutely.
But, the articles also say that when a type 3 is operating from a healthy place, they can be incredibly inspiring.
For sure. Healthy Type 3s, they can be really powerful catalysts for good. Their drive, it's not just self-serving. They often motivate others to reach their potential.
They lead by example.
Exactly. They kind of embody the best qualities of their environment.
It's like a ripple effect.
Yeah, pushing others to raise their game.
One of the articles even used the term, mirror effect.
Yeah, the mirror effect.
I thought that was a great way to put it. But, like with all Enneagram types, there's a whole spectrum of health levels.
Right.
And when a type 3 falls into those average or unhealthy patterns, that fear of worthlessness can really distort things.
It can.
So what happens when those fears take over? How does it show up? Well, at average levels that focus on external validation, it gets even stronger. Image becomes everything. And type 3s can start to prioritize appearances over substance. They get preoccupied with how they're perceived.
And the articles, they point out some pretty undesirable traits in unhealthy Type 3s, like manipulation, deceptiveness, even being vindictive.
Right. All to protect that image of success.
So it's a stark contrast to those inspirational figures we were talking about. Why is it so important to understand these different levels of a Type 3?
Well, understanding these patterns, in ourselves and others, it's crucial for relationships, for self-awareness, and it's important to remember, even when they're unhealthy, type 3s are acting from this place of deep fear.
It's a good reminder that everyone, no matter their Enneagram type, is dealing with their own stuff. Now, both articles mention these wings,
Yes.
which add another layer to the Type 3 personality. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. So each Enneagram type has 2 wings. Basically, they represent the influence of the types next to it on the Enneagram circle. And for type 3s, the wings are type 2, the helper, and type 4, the individualist.
So it's like these wings blend with the core Type 3 traits.
Exactly.
It's like adding a little spice to the recipe.
That's a good way to put it. So a type 3 with a 2-wing, sometimes called the charmer, they might be even more focused on relationships and social approval.
Okay.
They use their charm and social skills to get what they want and get that recognition.
And a Type 3 with a 4-wing, the professional, they'd be more introspective and driven by a need for individual achievement.
Exactly. They might express their creativity and uniqueness through their work, and they seek validation for those unique contributions.
So these wings, they really influence how a Type 3 approaches work. relationships, even their own identity.
That's right.
Thinking about examples, from pop culture, the articles suggest Oprah Winfrey as a classic type 3 with a 2 wing. Her charisma, her ability to connect with people, it's, really evident. And then maybe someone like Taylor Swift could be considered type 3 with a 4 wing.
That's a good example.
Her drive for success in music, but also her introspective artistic side that comes through in her songwriting.
Yeah, it highlights the diversity within a single Enneagram type. Even with the same core motivations, the expression can be so different depending on the wing.
So we've covered the core motivations of a type 3, the spectrum of healthy to unhealthy behaviors, and those wing influences. But how does all of this translate to personal relationships?
That's a great question, and it's definitely worth exploring further. Type 3s approach relationships with that same drive and desire for success.
I'm really interested to see where this goes.
Me too. Type 3s, they bring that same energy from their careers to their relationships.
So they want the relationship to be successful, like look good to the outside world.
Exactly. And reflect well on them, of course.
Makes sense. So that need for external validation, it spills over into their personal lives too.
Yeah. It's not always a conscious thing, but they might find themselves drawn to partners who, enhance their image or social standing.
But doesn't that create a kind of lack of genuineness?
You mean in the relationship?
Yeah. If you're so focused on how the couple appears, are you really connecting on a deeper level?
That's a really good point. And it is one of the potential pitfalls for type 3s in relationships. They can get so caught up in that image of success that they forget about the emotional needs of, well, everyone involved, themselves included.
The articles mention how type 3s can suppress their emotions. I can see how that would make real intimacy tough.
Right. If you're not in touch with your own feelings, how can you share them?
Exactly.
And remember, type 3s, they're part of that heart-based triad.
Oh, right.
So it's not that they don't have feelings, it's more like they've learned to push them away to focus on achieving.
So are they almost afraid of their emotions?
In a way, maybe they might worry that showing vulnerability will make them seem less capable.
Less successful, less worthy of all that admiration.
Exactly. It all ties back to that fear of being seen as worthless.
It's a lot of pressure, internal pressure, I mean.
For sure. That's why it's so important for type 3s to find healthy ways to deal with their feelings. Therapy, journaling, even creative stuff, anything to acknowledge and express those emotions.
It sounds like a key step towards, building genuine intimacy with themselves and with others.
Right. The articles also talk about the challenges type 3s face in long-term relationships. Their workaholic tendencies, they can start to neglect their partner. Prioritizing work over quality time, it throws things out of balance.
But can't they find a balance between ambition and personal life, I mean?
Of course they can. It takes effort and a willingness to really look at their priorities. Type 3s who want those relationships to work, they gotta slow down, be present.
Make time for their partners.
Exactly. And it's important for their partners to understand that deep need for validation and support. Appreciating them for who they are, not just what they accomplish.
Celebrating the person behind the achievements.
Yes. And encouraging them to do things they enjoy outside of work. That helps them find fulfillment beyond just their career.
Now, the articles also touched on Enneagram compatibility. Is there anything to that? Certain types being more compatible than others?
I wouldn't say the Enneagram is a matchmaking tool. It's more about understanding the dynamics between different types, like what might be challenging. It gives you insights into each other's motivations, fears, how you communicate.
It's a tool for growth, not a rule book for relationships.
Exactly. They mentioned a few pairings that could be interesting, like a type 3 with a type 1.
Driven, ambitious type 3 with the principled, perfectionistic type 1. It sounds like a power couple in the making, but maybe with some fireworks along the way.
Right. Both types are super motivated, goal-oriented, but their approaches can clash. The type 3 is all about efficiency and adapting, while the type 1 needs structure, rules.
I can see the potential for conflict there. What about other pairings?
Well, a type 3 with a type 7 could be an interesting mix.
So adventurous, fun-loving type 7 meets our driven, success-oriented type 3.
Yeah, that's a recipe for some excitement. Both types are outgoing, love new experiences. But again, there can be clashes. The type 3's focus on achievement might butt heads with the type 7's need for spontaneity.
So finding that middle ground between a shared love of adventure but different ideas about responsibility.
Exactly. These are just a couple of examples. The Enneagram can tell you a lot about how relationships work.
Sounds like a valuable tool,
Mm.
not just for romantic relationships, but any kind.
Oh, absolutely.
Ultimately, it comes down to communication, empathy, and a willingness to grow, together and individually.
Couldn't agree more. The Enneagram gives us a framework, but it's up to each person to use those insights to build healthy relationships.
So we've really delved into the complexities of type 3s in relationships. Their strengths, their struggles, that need for self-awareness. It's clear they bring a unique energy to their relationships. Okay, so we've covered a lot about the Enneagram Type 3, their motivations, strengths, challenges, how it all shows up in their relationships. As we wrap up, what are some big takeaways, things our listeners can really think about?
Well, I think self-awareness is huge. Like for type 3s, knowing they tend to look for validation outside themselves and how that drive can be both, a good thing and a potential trap. But honestly, this applies to everyone.
Right, we all have those moments where we're looking for approval or measuring ourselves against, external stuff.
Exactly. So the type 3 journey, it kind of holds up a mirror to all of us. Makes you ask yourself, what's really motivating me here?
Am I seeking validation for the right reason?
Yeah. And that kind of introspection, it can lead to a much deeper understanding of yourself, a more authentic way of being. And for type 3 specifically, it's about that balance between ambition and the need for real connection.
The articles really talked about type 3s connecting with their true selves, not giving up on their drive, but making sure it aligns with their values, their heart.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that their worth, it doesn't come from achievements or image. It's who they are deep down.
Flaws and all.
Right. And that's a reminder for all of us, right?
Right.
We have inherent worth, no matter what we achieve or what other people think. The Enneagram helps us understand our patterns, but then it's up to us to create a life that feels real, that feels fulfilling.
And the type 3 journey, it teaches us that real success, it's not just those external things.
No.
It's about living in line with your values, having meaningful connections, and embracing who you truly are.
I love that.
It's a powerful message.
Yeah.
It goes beyond just one Enneagram type. It's like an invitation to all of us to live more consciously, more authentically, and more connected to ourselves. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of the Enneagram Type 3.